I've been asked to talk about when I was spoken against from the pulpit the last time. I was spoken against several times. Most people won't remember the first time, but the first time that I was spoken against, it was because I was being stalked, and I had found tire tracks up through my yard one night. I was scared. I called the police. I didn't know what else to do. Edwin had told me to call the police if I found tire tracks, or if I felt like this person had been to my house, that I needed to call the police. So I called them. I did what I was told to do and called them. They came to my house and said, yes, there had definitely been damage, but what did they want me to do, or what did I want them to do about it? And I told them I really wanted them to file a report so that there would be something on file about what was going on. I knew that if there were several incidents and nothing had been reported at first, that I couldn't do anything later until a certain number of incidents had occurred. So I wanted them to go ahead and file the report so that it would be on file. I also wanted them to take some notes of the scene to possibly gain some information about who might be doing this. If it was the same person that I thought it might be, I wanted to be able to take that back to somebody in the church, to the pastor, and say, look, this is what happened, really. And we have evidence of it now. But it's not all in my head. I couldn't have imagined what would happen next, because the very next day I got a call from the Women's Crisis Center, and they started asking questions about, was everything okay and how could they help? I didn't talk about it, and I didn't talk about it with them they called once every week or two, maybe 3, for several months before I finally talked to them. And one night things got really, really bad, and the next day they called, and I broke down and I told them what had happened the night before. They scheduled an appointment with me, asked if I would feel comfortable coming in. I defended the church to them. I defended Edwin's actions in the situation. I defended the fact that nobody had tried to help me. I defended the church to them. But they gave me several suggestions for things that I could do to make things better in the future, to keep things from being so out of control in the future, and from these really bad nights like the one that I had had the night before from happening again without either one of us having to leave the church. I thought that was wonderful. I was so glad that I didn't have to leave and that to stop this, and that I didn't have to make somebody else leave. Edwin had told me I was trying to get this person kicked out of the church, and I wasn't. And I didn't. The last thing I wanted to do was have him have to leave, but I wanted the situation to stop. And they gave me some suggestions for simple things that the church could do to make sure that I was safe and that I wasn't being followed. I left Edwin a note that morning. I was so excited. I knew that my pastor would be thrilled to find out that nobody had to leave and everybody could feel comfortable again, and that this would protect so many people, and it could be a solution to several different problems in the church. Left him a note, so excited about this. And he got the note and immediately called everybody into the sanctuary and blasted out against this person who left this note under his door and had gone to law against their brother, because brother does not go to law against brother. And that would include me calling the police when I felt that I was in danger in my own home, because a brother might be the reason that I felt in danger, I suppose. And also because I had actually talked to somebody outside the church rather than thinking that he had just taken care of it when he hadn't taken care of anything. He just kept telling me it was all in my head. That doesn't take care of the problem. So I had been blasted already once publicly, and several other times in private. The morning that I came in, and there had been a new person coming to church. There was a problem with this new person, and this person kept coming and sitting right behind me, looking at me wrongly. I felt it was intimidating. I moved that morning to get away from the situation, moved to the other side of the sanctuary. You wouldn't think that moving and changing pews before service started in a church would create a problem, but that morning it did. I moved to the other side of the church. I sat with somebody else, and at one point during the service, he said something about a service that had occurred that the person next to me had not been at. When she asked me what he was talking about, because he was mad about something that had happened, and I turned around and quoted the verse that the man had been preaching about and what he had said about it. It took all of 10 seconds. It was a short verse, and I only had to say one other sentence to explain the whole thing. Before I finished the sentence, Edwin was jumping on me. He paced right in front of, I was like the third pew back. He paced right in front of that section, pointing his finger at me, talking about how, indicating me in several ways. And when he started yelling at me, right at the very beginning, she nudged me. And when she nudged me, and I realized what was going on, it was like I was watching from someplace else in the room. My mind just, I was not there. It was like I was just watching it. It was part of a dream, maybe, or a nightmare. He went on for 10 minutes. He made comments about all kinds of things that had nothing to do with the fact that I had quoted this verse in church, if quoting a verse in church was that bad even. But the comments that he made ended up being about lesbians, and that God hated a loudmouthed woman and I should shut up in church. When he stopped, I put my head down and I started sobbing. I'm sure people thought that I was repenting that morning, but what had happened was there had been 2 different instances, well, more than that, when I had been jumped in his office about something that I hadn't done. The 2 most major ones, people had lied about me to him, and rather than asking me what had happened or getting my side of the story, he called me in and accused me without any doubt in his mind that they were right, without considering that there might be an ulterior motive, without considering that there might be more than one side to the story. He just jumped me and accused me of everything that they had said. In one of those situations, I had realized that the man was nothing more than a bully. He would lift somebody up, praise them, encourage them, and then all of a sudden he'd slam them down to the ground. Leave them confused, hurt, in turmoil, and then once they broke to a certain degree and were crying and everything, he'd, "Oh, I love you, and everything's okay. It's going to be okay. I know you want to live for God." And he'd pat them back up a little bit and send them on their way. And they'd keep their head low for a while, and everything would seem okay almost. And then here before long, somebody else would lie about them, and they'd be right back in the office going through the same thing. When I realized he was enjoying it, and I realized that he was gaining pleasure from the power that he was wielding in making people doubt themselves and making people doubt God, and then telling them that they were wrong for doubting. When I realized that he was attacking people deliberately to throw them into confusion so that they couldn't ask questions, I realized he was nothing more than a bully, and I promised myself then that if he ever tried to do anything like that again, that I would leave. It wasn't that he had hit me, but I was around people in the past who had been abused physically. And I knew that what he was doing to me verbally was just as bad as what anyone could have done with their fists. Only he wasn't wounding me physically. Nobody saw the bruises except God saw my heart. He knew the turmoil in my mind. I wasn't the only one that went through that at Faith Tabernacle by any means. I put my head down that afternoon and I just started sobbing. I cried my way through most of the service and couldn't stop crying even after I left, because I knew I was going to leave. After I left the church that day, because I knew I was going to leave. People thought that I was repentant. People thought that everything was good. I knew I was gone. I knew I was leaving that day. I knew I had made some promises I needed to keep, but I knew that I would be leaving. I got the tape. I didn't know at the time. I had no idea how bad what he was doing to me actually was. Months later, I got the CD out and I listened to it. I thought maybe it was really all in my head, just like he had said. I thought maybe it was my imagination. Maybe it wasn't as harsh as it sounded. Maybe things weren't the way that they seemed. Now, I didn't have a video of the service. I just had an audio. I wasn't seeing his angry face. I wasn't seeing the vein pop out on his forehead. I wasn't seeing him point his finger and pace in front of me. I wasn't seeing the stares of the other people, and I wasn't seeing them jump up and shout over what he was saying to me and what he was doing to me. All I had was the audio, and when I started listening to it, I realized just how horrible what he was doing was and how wrong what he was doing was. I typed it out. I wanted to just be able to read it, and it was another month or two before I reread what I had typed out. And I saw the same anger and the same destructive qualities in the typed out version that I saw in the audio version and that I experienced in church that day. I kept thinking, that it would get better, that it really wasn't the way that it was. I really believed what he had said when he said that it was all in my head, that it was just that I was too sensitive and too thin-skinned, that it was my imagination, that he loved me and he wouldn't do anything to hurt me. I really believed him when he said those things, until I read the typed out version and I heard the same anger in the writing that I had heard in the verbal, in the audio version. Then I knew for sure that it was time to leave.